Let's also talk about our border security, which doesn't function very well. Basically, two revelations have come out this week from a man called what's his name? Neal. What's David Neal? His job was the Independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration. I know. I think we're all surprised to find out we had one of those because I didn't know we had borders anymore. We just come on in, the water's lovely. But he spoke out about alleged immigration security failings at airports. We talked about on the show yesterday, London City Airport had uncovered dangerous failings where passengers on supposedly high-risk flights weren't even being properly security checked. You and I get off a flight, we get security check. Oh, you're on a private flight, not a problem. I mean, on what basis? On what basis are these people considered to be safer? Oh, you're rich. You can afford a private jet. Well, by definition, you must be safe. I mean, madness. So he exposed that. But also, he has expressed other concerns about there not being enough checks. Now, he has been sacked unceremoniously by the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, for what they say is basically breaching the terms of his appointment, disclosing unauthorised information on border security to the media. He would have known this was going to happen.
Yeah.
David, if you want to talk to us, we'd love to get you on the show. He says he's standing by his concerns. He's going to give evidence to the Home Affairs Select Committee, Lords Committee in the Home Affairs next week. We want people to speak out on this stuff, don't we?
It's one of the things we always criticise the NHS for, is that people don't blow the whistle because they know they'll be punished and nothing will change. And I think that, there's, we've had this with the Horizon scandal, we've had this with the Hillsborough scandal. There is a culture in our government of covering their own backs, not actually listening to the concerns, and then when a catastrophe, something bad happens, they go, oh, no, nobody could have possibly seen that happening, but we shall be nicer to each other online. That seems to be the response to absolutely everything. And I think, frankly, I'd like to know what the timeline that is being spoken about here, but seriously, the idea that people can just land on a private jet just because they're wealthy and no security, it's not like any terrorist or drug lord or oligarch ever owned a private jet.
Daddy, the defence was, well, these actually weren't high-risk flights. And it's like, well, hold on a minute. I mean, if we're trying to stop people who are terrorists, from bombing planes and people trying to sneak into the country, well, I'm guessing most of the people on my Jet 2 flight back from the Alps on Sunday weren't high risk either. But we were all security checked.
Yeah, if people know that there is a way of getting things in and out of the country and it's reliably they know that they won't be checked because they're deemed to be safe, then they very quickly will become unsafe.
Exactly. Let's also talk about Martha's Rule. This is a new rule that's going to be rolled out across the NHS from the spring onwards, but not to all hospitals immediately, where doctors will be required to actually take note and to acknowledge parents' instincts. This is instincts. Actually, parents do know that. They think, look, I've certainly, when my daughter's been in hospital when she was very young, they're saying she seems fine. Like, no, this is her subdued. There is something wrong. I know there's something wrong. And I've certainly had other instances in our family where actually it's been parents who've had to say, no, I know my child is gravely ill. Please pay attention. And this is after a little girl, it's an awful story, 13-year-old Martha Mills. She died in 2021 after doctors at King's College Hospital in London missed signs of sepsis. Her parents kept saying her condition is deteriorating. We think there's something else you've not identified. They didn't realise she had sepsis, which is extraordinary because it's incredibly common in hospitals, we know now. But basically, it'll give families the right to get a second opinion from an independent team of doctors.
Yeah.
Not the one, not the supervisor for that doctor who often will, as we see again and again, will back up what they've said to not undermine them. This is about keeping people, children, patients alive. It's got to be a good thing. But why wasn't it happening already?
That's your guess is as good as mine. I mean, when you look at the number of people who die in this country as a result of clinical error or who have life change, it is staggering.
It's in the many
it's
thousands.
Unacceptable. And I think, frankly, I tell you what, I've got a relative who is a doctor, I've got friends who are doctors, and if you have that kind of knowledge, then people can say to you, look, you need to ask for this, you need to be very insistent on X, Y, Z if you're in a hospital for something. The average person doesn't necessarily know that. I think that this is a really important thing, therefore, that they have somebody, that they have a mechanism by which they can say, well, look, I'm not an expert, but this person might be. You might have made a mistake. I've just got a gut feeling. Because so often, as we see with the number of clinical errors that you get, it's something like a quarter or something higher than that. It's huge. It is not something that is
and
just...
people die. If we make a mistake, we're libaling somebody. Doctors should welcome this. They shouldn't see it as undermining them. We need to have a situation in the NHS, in all organisations where life or death is at stake, in the same way as you have when there's an airline disaster, where there is there is a whole attitude is about saving lives, keeping planes in the sky, and about people speaking out. I spoke to an air traffic controller once who said, Genuinely, they are encouraged. You're not telling on your colleagues, saying,
Yeah.
I think he's too. I don't think he's working to the best of his ability, because thousands of people could die if you get things wrong, and you're encouraged. And it's not a sort of a whistleblower type thing.
It's not a personal attack.
It's not a personal attack.
Things aren't right today.
Things aren't right today, and you have to admit it. Indeed. Talking of planes, I do want to get to this story. I keep being told move on, but no. I love this. Ryanair passengers enduring what they called the worst flight ever. We could all compete for that, can't we? After two men began to fight and spit at each other on the aisle of a service between Edinburgh and Tenerife. I mean, I think we can safely say alcohol would have been involved. We've had to, for the video, we're having to blur out quite a lot of the faces, rules and all that. But basically, it just went full off. A woman started attacking one of the men. One of the guys spat on his hand and spat on another man's hand. I mean, really, really bad stuff, really unpleasant. But staff basically saying, go back to your seats and sit down.
It shouldn't be that flights end up having crowd control methods. I think you should only be allowed on a plane if you're wearing a suit and tie, and you should only be allowed to drink with a meal. And I think all flights should serve a meal, I happen to say. But I think the golden age of flight has gone, but we should bring it back.
You basically want to only go on flights in Mad Men.
Yes.
Don't you?
It's just me.
It's just you. No seatbelts.
I want a private jet out of London City Airport that isn't being checked by border security.
We all want the private. Seriously, come on.
If only I'd known.
There must be someone rich enough who could offer that. We will not be well behaved.
No, we won't.
We would not. Anyway,
we'll get kicked off the
flight.
Shall
we move on? Let's move on. Let's talk about more important things. We are asking about Prince William, who is facing criticism for calling for an end to the fighting in Gaza. Lots of people are also praising him for getting involved. What's your opinion? Get in touch. You can have your say. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text on 87222, and you can get in touch on X at TalkTV. Danielle, I do apologise. Danielle says, just feel when we lost the Queen, we lost more than the reigning monarch. Joe says he should keep his mouth closed. The royal family is there to shake hands and meet dignitaries, not to interfere in politics. And Paul says, why is calling for peace and saying bring the hostages home political? What is wrong with wanting to make the world a better place? It's a fair question. But does it make any difference, him saying it? Or is it a little bit Twitter virtue signalling? You've also been getting in touch on the phones. Keep those calls coming in. Let's go to Marcus, who is in Colchester. Good morning to you, Marcus.
Good morning, Julia. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you for calling. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I was just thinking, the remarks that Prince William have made, if it were not a kind of vague and anodyne collection of platitudes straight from the sort of peace, love and understanding red book, I might be actually inspired to be angry. But actually, it's not just that. It is a political comment. And I think it demonstrates the yawning chasm between the IDF and the Israeli state, and with Prince William's understanding of what we're dealing with in Hamas. It just shows an extraordinary ignorance and lack of insight into what's going on.
Do you think it's naive? I mean, but then lots of these statements, even like the motions, the SNP, Labour and everyone put forward today, all this, like, we call on all sides. It's like you're dealing with a democratic elected government. I don't agree with everything the Israeli government does. I'm certainly not a fan of Benjamin Netanyahu, but you're dealing with a government as opposed to a terrorist organisation that wants every Jew in, not just Israel, in the world to be dead and educates all the young people in Gaza to believe that. That's saying all sides is a bit glib, isn't it?
That's axiomatic of the organisation of Hamas, the entire destruction of the Israeli nation, And I think that our comments are just our sort of machinations and our hand-wringing, just that, hand-wringing by a bunch of sixth form debating society, overpaid sixth form debating society.
Do you think, but as you said earlier, if it did actually make a more of a political statement, would you be happy with that? Or do you think the Prince should stay completely out of politics?
Listen, there was a song, was it Gary Barlow, you say it best when you say nothing at all.
Love it. Marcus in Colchester, thank you very much. You say it best when you ring up the show. Thank you very much. Quick word from Benedict.
Well, that's the thing, that's the thing, isn't it? Not the king just yet. That's
almost,
the thing. It is the detachment from the reality of what war is, but also from the very specific situation in Israel. Ultimately, Benjamin Netanyahu answers to the Israeli public. The Israeli public are not calling for the mass sort of universal ceasefire because they know what Hamas is. They've experienced it firsthand on October the 7th.
Given how close our British royal family is with the Saudi royal family, love him to issue some statements about what the Saudis have been doing in Yemen. Don't think that'll be coming anytime soon.